Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. Back from a great Memorial Day. Well, not really. You know, if you really think about it, instead of just paying tribute to our veterans, all of the dead, we were forced to concentrate on one man, Jose Guerrno, whose life was ended by a Tucson SWAT team. Beautiful wife and children, whole family there decimated, and now the propaganda starts. Same way, this is going to happen the same way as Jerry Kane. These stories will be leaked to the press. Oh, well, there were some drugs, and they found some drugs in a friend's house. So there were some drugs there, and they were, and they may have been involved in a home invasion. Well, guess what? We will never know, because like Jerry and Joe Kane, who I've been dealing with on this channel, on this network, on this website for the last year, he didn't get a trial. He didn't get his day in court. And all the time they were talking about him, I kept seeing Waco replayed in my memory. 17 little children murdered because, well, we had to do that to save them from a child molester who was selling guns. And this is what they're doing. The whole propaganda now. They turned, with Jerry and Joe Kane, it was to turn your eye at the sovereigns, the people that think they're sovereign. Don't they know they're slaves? Come on. And we are. This is the demonization, and I experienced it. I can see it in the eyes of Stuart Rhodes when I talked with him. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not a racist. I am none of those things, and I am not. I'm aware that we're in slavery. So I may not exactly think of myself as a sovereign, and I still have my Social Security number because I live off of Social Security right now because they've killed every source of income I have. And if somebody in Jose Guerrno's family is into drugs, it's because the CIA and the Mossad and government forces in Mexico. You see, they're interchangeable. They're interchangeable, folks. Al-Qaeda's our friend if they're in Libya. If they're in Iraq, they're our enemy. Because in Iraq, the Iraqi people become the enemy, and that's what they are doing to us. They are if you're a gun owner, and I'm going to have Larry Pratt back on pretty soon here. Pretty soon. Maybe sooner than I think. I haven't checked it for a little while. They're targeting gun owners. He had a gun, so we had to shoot him. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. It wasn't quite 60 times. We didn't shoot him. We only shot him 24. The psychological profile, and remember, the media, mainstream media, is your enemy. They're your enemy, folks. They're going to tell you bullshit to make you believe that, oh, we had to go into Waco. We had to kill all those people. Why, they were becoming self-sufficient. That's why we had to go into Libya, man. They were getting their water piped in. Whoa. Getting to be self-sufficient. That's not just me. Now, my friend Sheriff Richard Mack was there. I've been supporting Mack, and I've been into his office when he was sheriff and talked to him. Now, keep in mind, folks, I'm going to tell you one more thing. What they have done to me, to demonize me, to make me, oh, you're anti-Semitic, oh, you're racist, oh, you're a constitutional, oh, you think you're sovereign. What they have done to me, they are doing to Stuart Rhodes right now, and Stuart Rhodes recognizes that. It's the same people. It's the ADL, it's the Southern Poverty Law, which is simply the civilian cover for the Mossad's operations here, against anybody that may be upset, whether your name is, whether you're an Israelite, an Israeli by the name of Vanunu, who blew the whistle on Israel, having 400 nuclear weapons, and who's paid a heavy price for it, years and years and years in prison. Doesn't matter. But he is trying to tell the people of the world what's happening here. We got a gang of criminals that are headquartered in Israel. Actually, they're headquartered in 3 cities, Washington, D.C., where they control, everybody works for them. Everybody works for the banks. And now they are turning the American people. We've been telling you this for years, folks. They will not come after us while we got our guns. That's why they were so afraid of the militias, so they demonized me. But I started the militias in the governor's office. The governor was on my show. Yeah, take the Israeli Defense Force and stick it up your ass, Rabbi Ted. Don't kick him. Let him stay here so I can insult this stupid son of a bitch. IDF is killing Palestinian children, and we are the Palestinians today. What happened to Jose Guerrno is what they do to the Palestinians. That's a mindset that this Israeli Defense Force called the Mossad is putting into your heads. Now, I've always been a threat to the establishment because I know what the Constitution says. I know what the Constitution says. It gave us our freedom. It gave us our rights. We got a Bill of Rights. This is inalienable rights, folks. So you IDF guys, you Mossad guys, you rabbis, you so-called Judeo-Christian preachers like Hagee that are leading people into slaughter. Into slaughter. But, let's see. And I think I can do this. Let's see what Stuart Rhodes has to say.
He was awoken to the sound of his wife, letting him know, yelling at her arm men outside. And so calling for him, and he responded much the same way anyone else would respond.
He's talking about Jose Guerrno, how he responded.
This is the problem, is that in this country, because we are free, because we do have the right to bear arms, because quite a few of us are well-trained veterans, whether military, police,
that's why they're afraid of the veterans.
Well-trained civilians, we're going to respond the same way he did. Of all the men in Oathkeepers, 12,000 some members that were polled, no one disagreed. No one's going to do anything different than what he did. We'd all respond the same way. So you wind up with a perverse situation where the better trained you are, the more likely you are to be shot by SWAT simply for defending your family. I've had some SWAT officers argue that somehow this makes doing these entries like this makes people safer because they're coming so overwhelming force, dynamic entry with flashbangs and all that. People just, freeze up and go deer in the headlights. That might be true for an untrained individual. But a trained individual, you get an ex-Army Ranger, you get a trained Marine, you get a guy like me as a paratrooper and a prime instructor, you get a guy like Bill Buford from Special Forces or a Tier, or you get a retired police officer, Sheriff Mack, or one of my police officers in our leadership, Dave Freeman, 30 years Las Vegas Metro bike cop. He's not going to stand there and breathe. He's going to grab his firearm, he's going to go to work. And the problem is that, if he's going to work against a bad guy, criminal home invasion, he'll be lauded as a hero. He goes to work against other police officers, he's probably going to die. Or if he survives, he'll be called a cop killer. So this is the problem. The Fourth Amendment is there for a reason. The founders have lived through warrantless searches. They've lived through officers with plenty of authority coming to their doors and to their house when they wanted to. So that's why the Fourth Amendment is there. One of the causes of the revolution was the writs of assistance, explaining that a customs officer can just, what they call a general warrant, no requirement of probable cause, and he can just come into the home whenever he wanted to. It wasn't just a matter of the fact that there were no probable cause determination by a judge. That's bad enough. And our modern counterpart are the national security letters the FBI is writing for itself right now. But the other problem was the manner in which the searches were done. The officers would use that power as a tool. There was one case where there was a dispute, and a customs officer was involved in the dispute, and he said, well, I'll show you my power. And he came back with his agents and said, I'm going to show you what I can do. And he came into the house, into the home of these people. So the founders wrote the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, to protect us against unreasonable searches and seizures. And of course, as anyone that follows Supreme Court jurisdiction, that our jurisprudence knows, that they've watered down what is reasonable, they've watered down that standard to the point of absurdity. You now have last week's Supreme Court ruling that said that if a police officer knocks on your door and hears what he determines is sound, the essential sound of evidence being destroyed, he can go ahead and kick in the door and come in without a warrant. But the criteria for reasonableness is not just getting a warrant. A lot of folks think that once they have a warrant, after that, they can just come in any way they want to. How they come in makes a big difference. And as I said earlier, I submit that a warrant that is served in such a manner that results in your death is the epitome of an unreasonable search. And below that, if you're lucky to survive, a search method that brings armed agents of the state face-to-face with armed gun owners and potentially well-trained veterans or former police officers is also unreasonable. Because what you're doing is you're throwing two trained professionals face-to-face in a dark hallway, in a dark doorway, where the homeowner does not know who this is. They have to assume it's bad guy, criminal home invaders. But while the homeowner is trying his best to go through a cycle, an OODA loop cycle of observe, orientate, decide, and act, he's thinking to himself, is this a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun? Problem is while he's doing that process, on the other side of the coin, the SWAT officer comes to the door, what's he thinking? Only if he sees a man with a gun, threat, he shoots. In his mind, there's no such thing as a good guy with a gun inside that house. Two different OODA loops going. Which one's faster? What's going to happen when they collide? What happened here? You had a man who died with the safety on. Now, you might say, well, he was just incompetent. He just forgot to pull the safety off. That would be the argument that, well, he obviously was intending to shoot police officers. Well, if that was the case, well, I don't buy that, first of all. He's a two-tour combat vet, well-trained Marine. I think the likely situation was he was in the middle of that OODA loop process trying to...
I've been saying this for years and years. They sprayed us with Agent Orange in Vietnam because they didn't want well-trained combat vets coming back to this country and seeing how far we had descended into communism. This is Stuart Rhodes speaking. And Zionists funded both sides in the Korean War and in the Vietnam War. They're doing the same thing in Iraq and stirring up trouble for Iran. So let's
whether these were good guys or bad guys, and he was doing the responsible thing and had his thumb on the safety. He was writing it, but it was not clicked off. You train safety on, come up, safety off. It's really easy to do. Anybody who knows firearms knows that. So that's what I think happened. He was trying to decide who these people were, and on the other side of the coin, as soon as the SWAT officer saw a rifle raised, then they fired. That's the problem. As I said earlier, we're not here to beat up on individual officers in the Pima County Sheriff's Department, or even the ones on that SWAT team. We're going to provide a lack of medical care. We'll talk about that later. But up front, going through a door like that, and going into a fatal funnel, I can understand when they see weapon raised at them, they're going to fire. The problem is they shouldn't have been there in the first place. And as I said earlier, I've got an uncle here who served 25 years as the Pima County Sheriff's Deputy, Robert Creech. Great guy. I grew up coming down here for the summers. I'd see him leaving his uniform, start of the day, come home after a long day's work. Good man. He thinks this was unreasonable. And he thinks this was unreasonable because what it does is it puts a big bullseye on the head of gun owners. And if you were here right now, I would talk to you. Point is, though, is we're not here to beat up on the individual officers. There's a systemic problem within law enforcement in this country, and that problem is that increasingly the tactics that are deployed are the same tactics that are deployed overseas in warfare or in counterterrorism operations, and they've let down, now they're being deployed across this country. Of 400 raids per day is the estimation. You can go to Avaialble's interactive map on the Sheriff Institute's website. It's a fantastic resource, and you can see multiple examples of still being. One example was a family was a narcotics. Once again, a search warrant into a home with a family. The whole family is thrown on the ground with weapons pointing to the back of their heads. One of them was a little 11-year-old boy. SWAT officer had a shotgun in the back of his head. The shotgun discharges, blows the little kid's head off. How is that a reasonable search? So, in answer to the SWAT officer, argues that this somehow makes everyone safer. I'd say, yeah, maybe in a hostage situation, maybe in the case of a barricaded gunman, you're right, that's how you want it done. But not to search warrants, you want it with dead kids. And there's been many situations where they've gone to the wrong house and then killed the wrong guy, killed someone who's doing nothing at all. One guy turned around and a hairdryer in his hand. You couldn't hear him come in. Turns out the hairdryer in his hand, they shoot him. They think it's a gun. Why does he have to, in his own house, make sure his hands are clear as he walks around in his bathroom? He doesn't. Because he had a hairdryer in his hand, they shot him. That's the problem. That tight time frame, adrenalized dynamic injury situation where their training is to identify things in people's hands and fire. That's a problem. That works for barricaded situations, for hostages. Does not work when the person inside is not someone who's trying to kill other people. Okay? You don't sort of search for it like that. So this has to stop. And our point being here today, this was a particularly tragic, unnecessary death. And we felt compelled to be here. We had enough. As Sheriff Mack said in the one audio we put online, he's had enough of it. And it's time for us to take a stand. We're going to lose some police officers. We have, quite a few thousands in our organization. But I don't see anybody else stepping up. I don't see the Fraternal Order of Chiefs of Police stepping up. I don't see any other police organizations doing this. So I feel like we're compelled to make sure that we do the right thing. And let the chips fall where they're back. So, but anyway, we're here to talk about the policy now. This is a policy that must change. It should start here. As Sheriff Mack said earlier, the memorial. We want to make sure that this is not in vain. This will be the start. It's going to take time, though. It took decades for our police to be turned from peace officers who were there to keep the peace to be turned into just law enforcers. And there's a big, big difference. Okay? The primary purpose of government is to secure our rights. That's what we had the Declaration of Independence read earlier. We had a Marine Sergeant Gonzalez do the Declaration of Independence along with her husband. And the critical point is that when any government becomes abusive of those ends, it's no longer legitimate. And our government in this country, because of the erosion of our Bill of Rights and the expansion of the concept of government supremacy over the individual citizen, it's flipped upside down in Founders Intent. We're supposed to be sovereign. They turn it upside down. And increasingly the government's treating us like serfs, extending the authority and the power to come into our homes when they want to. That's why the Supreme Court of Indiana's decision last week also was so egregious. Stating that you have no right to resist, even to use reasonable resistance against unlawful entry by a police officer. So a blatantly unlawful, not even arguing whether it's lawful or not, just a blatantly unlawful entry. The argument there is you have no right to resist it. What's that make you? Makes you a serf. So we're going to roll this back, and while we do it, though, like I said, we're going to be mindful of the fact that.
Now remember what he just said.
As I said earlier, all of us.
Let me back that up just a second. I want you to hear what he said there. If you can't defend yourself, now this is what he's talking about, the law in Indiana. The law in Indiana, they passed, or a court passed a law saying it's illegal to resist, to defend your home, to defend your Fourth Amendment rights with your Second Amendment rights. This is what he's saying. And if you, what I believe he says here, you're a serf, you're a servant, you are a slave. If this is the way it is, if you can't defend your home and castle, according to our our Fourth Amendment here, then you are a slave. Now listen again.
I'm not even arguing whether it's lawful or not. Just a blatantly unlawful entry. The argument there is you have no right to resist it. What's that make you? Makes you a serf. So we're going to roll this back, and while we do it, though, like I said, we're going to be mindful of the fact that, none of this is pure. As I said earlier, all of us who swore an oath to defend the Constitution, veterans of the military, veterans of the police, we're all responsible for the erosion of our Bill of Rights and for going astray. Okay? We can't just point the blame only at the police officers. It's our responsibility, too. So it's our responsibility, likewise, the police officers, the military veterans, the committed citizens, the firefighters, those who do still value the Constitution, we have to work together, not to divide and conquer ourselves, but work together to walk back towards liberty, towards a full-strength Bill of Rights. And if the courts will respect the Bill of Rights, then we got to use political pressure. And so we encourage folks to start with this instance right here. Tomorrow we're going to go and we're going to submit our proclamation to the governor, to the Attorney General of Arizona, and also the Arizona State Legislature, and we're going to call for an independent investigation. That's what they want to talk about for Big Sheriff Mack. Whenever you have a district attorney investigating a shooting, which you have there is a conflict of interest. He is the county attorney. He's the attorney for the county in civil suits. When the Indiana County sues Pima County, and the Pima County Sheriff's Department, it's going to be the county attorney, it's going to be on the other side, defending those actions. How could you ever expect any kind of independent review of the behavior of the police department from a criminal standpoint from the same man who's going to defend them in a civil case? It is, even as pure or as honest and full of integrity as any individual is, what do the founders tell us? Let's show no more trust in men, but bind them down with the chains of the Constitution and admit angels that have no need of government, as Madison said in those papers. You have to have divided power. That's why you have division of power. You can't have the county investigating the county and a department of the county and expect an independent review. It won't happen. So that's why you need to have someone at the state level, the AG preferably, but someone at the state level who has to do an independent investigation into the shooting. That should be done with every shooting. Now, I believe the Sheriff Mack does in the primacy of the sheriff in his duties to uphold and defend the Constitution. But when you have a sheriff who is trampling on the Fourth Amendment and violating the rights of the citizens under the state constitution, the other oath sworn officers in the state have an obligation and a duty to correct that. They need to investigate. And if he is breaking his oath and violating his oath, he has no authority to act outside of his limited duties under the Constitution. Right, Sheriff Mack? So we will call for an independent investigation, and across this country, we're going to encourage people first to approach their sheriff and say, Sheriff, here's our proclamation about this incident, in Arizona. We want a written commitment from you, a promise that you will not do this in this community. Put him on the spot. Get it in writing. If he won't do that, this will be a litmus test for you when it comes to the next election. If he won't respect your home, you're supposed to be secure in your papers, homes, and effects. How secure do you feel if you know that the police are claiming the authority and the power and the right to mimic a home invasion? That's what it really turns out to be. They're saying that, hey, we don't care what you want. We reserve the right to kick in your door, just like a criminal home invasion gang would do. And while you're trying to figure out who it is, if you dare, keep and bear arms and dare to arm yourself in defense of your family against what you perceive as a home invader, then we are going to shoot you, is what they're really telling you. They tell you they're going to use SWAT teams in this manner. I know that might take off some police officers when we talk about that, but you tell me what else it says. So you should insist that SWAT teams are used for the rarest of circumstances and not used on a low threshold. Here's another big problem, is that when asked about the criteria that's used for the use of SWAT teams like this, the spokesman, Lieutenant, it was O'Connor, correct, of the Pima County Sheriff's Department, when asked what criteria triggers a SWAT raid, he said, well, narcotics investigation, a long history of criminal violence, or number 3 was that the suspect may be armed. So now they're starting to elevate your gun ownership as being as serious a reason, as valid a reason for triggering the use of a SWAT raid as if you had a long rap sheet of criminal violence. So that should be a wake-up call for the gun owner in this country. That's another big point I want to make, is that far too many conservatives out there have separated out parts of the Bill of Rights. They pay too much attention only to the Second Amendment, not as much to the Fourth, or the First, or the Fifth, or the Sixth. They're all there for a reason. Do you think our founders are fools? They were not. They learned from history. They all interrelate. So, Sheriff Mack is going to come up, and as I said before, I'll let him directly address Sheriff Dubnik, one sheriff to another. Sheriff Mack was a sheriff in Graham County, Arizona, and he's been in law enforcement, or as a peace officer, I should say. He served 25 years as a peace officer in one capacity or another in Utah and Arizona. And he is famous for going up against the Clinton administration in the Brady gun bill case. And he was also, in fact, I think he has something to say about Judge Roll as well, who he considers to be a model, a constitutional judge. So, Sheriff Mack, please come up.
All right. That's, let me see here. Okay. This is what I've been telling you. You know, this is really what's going on here is a war on the First Amendment. They are trying to overwhelm you with their side of the story, their information, because this is all good for you in the long run. In the future, when it's a one world government, everybody will be so happy while they're under our thumb. And this is the next step in the whole war. The Waco was a psychological war on the American people. The death of this Marine sent out word to militias, gun owners, constitutionalists. Jerry Kane's murdered anybody's trying to beat the banks at their own game in the mortgage racket. That sent a message to them. This sent a message to the gun owners and the law owners and law enforcement. Hey, we're going to back up these SWAT teams. This is special weapons and tactics aimed at the American people, and the propaganda is to make the sovereigns, to make the gun owners, to make anybody that's standing up against one world government. And this is what I've told you. The war on terror is a war against anyone anywhere in the country that does not want one world government of the banksters, by the banksters, and for the banksters. No, we won't be happy in a one world government, and it's damn sure not going to happen. Thanks to the some of the information that we seized 200 years ago, the protocols of the elders of Zion, laying out the whole plan for a one-world government under Satan. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a forgery. Don't you know that's a forgery? Yeah, what's a forgery? An exact copy of the original. We'll be right back here.